Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Jennifer LaRue. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Mark Twain House Museum in Hartford, Connecticut, and I'm delighted to be part of this evening's presentation. I know you're all going to have a great time. I've got to spend some time with Tessa and Lauren and Nyah in the green room and in our tech run, and I guarantee you're going to enjoy their company tonight. I just have a little bit of housekeeping to do before I introduce our guests. And I'm going to do that as quickly as I can. So welcome to Crowdcast. If you've not used Crowdcast before, introduce you to some of the features. You all have discovered the chat already. That's fantastic. And keep chatting throughout the program, please. It's part of the fun of the Crowdcast, makes us feel connected. And know that the chat remains live even after this program is over. The program is recorded, will go up on our website. So if you make a friend from far away and want to keep in touch, you can come back and chat away. However, we're going to take questions and answers toward the end of the program. And if you have a question for Tessa or for Lauren, if you would be so kind as to place that in the Ask a Question section that you see down at the bottom of your screen, that will make that go a whole lot better. I'm hearing somebody say that there's an echo in my speech. Is that a problem for others? Please let me know. That may mean, KL, that you have the program open in two places, on two tabs or two devices. But please let me know, Jacques, if that's an issue. Okay, thanks, KL, for letting me know. Okay, again, I don't want to talk for too long. So I will tell you a little bit about our sponsorships, first of all. We're very grateful to our sponsors, the Wish You Well Foundation and Connecticut Public WNPR are sponsors of our public programs, be they virtual or in person, which we'll be doing again one of these days soon. And this program is produced in part with support honoring the legacy of Frank Lord, our beloved former trustee. I want to talk to you a little bit about the opportunity to purchase Tessa Afshar's new book, Jewel of the Nile. You can get it in paperback or hardback. And, you know, we at the Mark Twain House are no dummies. We know that you can buy this book elsewhere. But do know that if you do decide to purchase it through us, first of all, you'll benefit the Mark Twain House Museum, which is very, very important to us. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But also, Tessa has very generously offered to personalize copies. She'll be signing them. And you don't get that anywhere else. So please take advantage of that very generous opportunity. The other thing I just want to point out is the green bar below my face that says your support is vital to the Mark Twain House and Museum. That remains true. It's been true throughout this whole COVID situation. We've really been proud of our ability to continue offering these programs to keep us all connected and entertained and illuminated during these hard months. But it's been a real financial burden for us. And we are coming out of COVID now and starting to offer our guided house tour again, which I hope all of you will be able to join us for soon. But we have been without our major revenue source, which is that guided house tour, for most of the past year. And so we're kind of grateful for any penny, any dollar, any $5, whatever anybody can spare and share with us. And just know, on behalf of the whole staff and the Board of Trustees of the Mark Twain House and Museum, that anything you can share with us is put to very good use and deeply, deeply appreciated. I do live in the big city. Thanks, Jacques. So speaking of the big city, there's a connection that I just want to talk to you about tonight. So Tessa's new book it starts in the town of Cush, or the city of Cush. And that's not a city that Mark Twain actually visited himself, but he visited Egypt in 1867 as part of his tour of Europe and the Holy Land that he wrote about so vividly and humorously in his book, The Innocents Abroad, which is a travelogue. And that was actually the best-selling of all his books during his lifetime. He did get to see the Egyptian pyramids, about which he wrote, "At the distance of a few miles, the pyramids rising above the palms looked very clean-cut, very grand and imposing, and very soft and filmy as well. They swam in a rich haze that took from them all suggestions of unfeeling stone and made them seem only the airy nothings of a dream, structures which might blossom into tiers of vague arches or ornate colonnades, may be and change again into all graceful forms of architecture while we looked and then melt deliciously away and blend with the tremulous atmosphere. So think about that when you think about your pyramids, and we love that Mark Twain connection. So thank you for humoring me while I inserted a little bit of Mark Twain into this program. I'm going to introduce next Tessa and Lauren Yarger. Excuse me. I'm going to invite them both on screen. Lauren Yarger is a producer and playwright with Bracewell Productions, a Broadway theater reviewer, and a writer and reviewer for Publishers Weekly. Everybody, please join me in giving a great big Mark Twain House welcome to Lauren and Tessa. Hello, welcome, or I should say welcome back. You've both been here before, and you're two of our favorite people. So I am going to sit back now and relax and enjoy listening to you talk, and you just let me know when you want me back on screen.
Well, we'll probably want you back on screen a little sooner because I can see Lauren's mic is off and she seems frozen. So unless you want me to ask myself all the questions,
I don't.
you want to try and resurrect her?
Oh, okay. Well, this is very cruel sounding, but Lauren, if you can hear me.
Here she is.
Can she hear? Well, I can't hear you though, Lauren. So audience, Jacques, can you let us know, can you hear Lauren speaking?
Yeah, it says her mic is off. It has a cross in front of it.
Yeah, and I can't untoggle it. I'm so sorry, everybody, for this tech. I see that. I can't So, Lauren, I'm going to take you off screen and ask you to come back in, and we'll see you in a moment, and Tessa and I will chat.
So while Lauren has gone off screen, I just want to take a moment and say thank you, everybody, for showing up. And thank you for giving your evening to this exciting birthday bash for Jewel of the Nile. And thank you so much for the Mark Twain House for graciously inviting Lauren and me back. I think that we give them some like forgetfulness powder so that they forget how much trouble we are.
That is not the case. In fact, I think it is just one of the most agreed upon things of all at the Mark Twain House that we love Tessa and Lauren and love having them around. And Tessa, I've never had the privilege of meeting you in person, so I'm really looking forward to that opportunity when it presents itself.
I do too.
I also get to come back up at the end. I think you have some goodies for some of our guests tonight. Is that true?
It's absolutely true. Everybody be really nice to Jennifer. Jennifer will be choosing the winners. And of course, Jacques Lamar, who's also every once in a while, like right there, he said, congratulations, but he's writing notes and he's answering your questions. So Jacques is really like the guy who pulled all of us together. He's one of those behind the scenes, really important people, and I want to take a moment to say thank you to Jacques. He's awesome.
He is awesome, and I'm glad you said something, Tessa. He's a wonderful colleague and a wonderful friend and great at his job. And here's Lauren. Say a few words.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay!
All right, let's not do any more of me. I'm going away. You two have fun.
All right, thank you. Gosh, I was lost in cyberland there somewhere. Tessa, we are celebrating the birthday of your book.
We are, and I'm so excited because that means I'm not getting older. It's the book's birthday.
Okay. And as Jennifer said, this is not our first time doing a launch of one of your books here at the Mark Twain House. You had 2 previous launches that we did there. And one of those launches was for the book that you wrote that had the story of Ruth and Naomi in it. And recently, you went back to research that you had done for that book and wrote a Bible study that just recently won the ECPA 2021 Book of the Year for Bible Studies. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. That was quite a shock. One of those graces you don't expect. But yeah, I think, these are things that we have prayed about for years and years ago. And we didn't even think to pray for an award, to be honest. I don't think I ever did. But But anyway, God kind of added grace to that. And so that's my first nonfiction book that has gotten published.
And it won the book of the year.
It did. Yay!
But we were just chatting about some of these memories that we have from over the years. We go back a long way. So full disclosure to everybody, I'm not just a journalist here asking questions of this author. This is a very dear friend. And before even the Mark Twain launches, we've been friends. We're members of a writers group with our friend Lucinda Seacrest McDowell, who's here in the audience with us tonight. And so we've done a lot of things together, but we were talking recently and saying that really what we've done a lot of over the years is have fun and laugh a lot. And you were thinking that we should share with our audience tonight our escapades on our trip from Boston some years ago, and then they can get some idea of just how crazy our friendship is. We were in Boston and traveling back with Cindy. Cindy was driving, and she put in her GPS that we wanted to stop at a Cracker Barrel because we were starving. We'd had these meetings all day long, and we wanted to stop and have something to eat before we came home. And we were driving and driving and driving, and suddenly we realized we were talking and laughing. We were trying to find a title for one of your books at that time, and we were coming up with some really hysterical unusable ideas for titles.
Well, I have to interrupt for a minute, which is that Cindy, we got near our exit, and suddenly Cindy says, "You have 30 seconds. One of you has to take over because the GPS wasn't working." And somehow I got chosen. Now, my husband is in the other room right now laughing at the idea of, because he has chosen me when we first got married. He had chosen me once to read the map and read directions. And we ended up in like the worst part of New York, exactly where we were trying not to go. So I kept trying to explain that I have no sense of direction. Like God decided that I didn't need any, and this is how I would trust him or something. So I have no sense of direction. So, okay, so you take over from there.
So we kept getting into these further and further. We suddenly realized we were in the middle of nowhere near a highway. And Cindy kept saying, "But I thought Cracker Barrels were right near the exit." And we were like, "But surely it's taking us to the right place." And we were listening to her GPS and it wasn't working. And we're trying to and this was before you just gotten a new iPhone, so you didn't really know how to use it, and we're trying to get the GPS on that to tell us where to go. And as we were driving along, we saw a light ahead in the road, and we thought, oh, something's coming up. We'll pull in there, whatever it is. And when we got there, the sign said Joe's Pizza and Massage Parlor. And we were just hysterically laughing because it really did seem to read like it was one place. But this was just getting shadier and shadier, this neighborhood. And you were like, there's no way you would want to order a pizza there, never mind have a massage while you also got the pizza, And so finally, you were just desperate in the back seat and said, "We're lost." And then Siri said, "I'm sorry."
I'm so sorry.
And we just laughed. I mean, it's a good 2-hour drive back from Boston to where we are in Connecticut, an hour and a half to 2 hours. We just laughed that whole time. And I still remember getting home. We dropped Cindy or she dropped us at our cars, and we drove to our houses, and I got home and my phone rang, and it was Cindy on the other end, still laughing like half an hour later. So anyway, this is where we're coming from when we sit down to talk. It's from a fun friendship point of view. If you're not in a writers group, you should.
But we did make it to the proper restaurant. And we never did go inside Joe's Pizza and Massage Parlor.
No, we never did. And I never even tried to go back and find it again, ever.
Neither did I.
Anyway, we are here to introduce Jewel of the Nile to the world. It makes its premiere today. The book is available as of today. And as Jennifer said, you can order it through the Mark Twain House And this broadcast, I believe, and the ability to order it through the Mark Twain House will be for a couple of days. Anyway, she can explain that more at the end, but you'll have a chance to do that. So tell us just a little bit about the story of this book of Chariline, this character, and how you came to write about her and set her in the ancient kingdom of Cush.
Wow, that's quite a big sort of question, and thank you for setting it up. So
Sure,
the story, right? So the storyline is about a young woman named Chariline in first century. She is a Roman citizen, and the story is about this young woman searching for her father, because all her life, Chariline, who's an orphan, her mother was born at her birth. And her father, the only two things she knows about her father are that he's dead and that she's never to ask any questions about him. Her grandfather has forbidden it. And so her grandfather, who's a Roman official in the kingdom of Cush, has set these rules. But one night, Chariline overhears her grandfather have a conversation and realizes that, in fact, her father is alive. And so the whole sort of adventure part, external adventure part of the story is about Chariline looking for this missing father, trying to figure out who he is and finally find a family where she belongs. Because, and okay, here's the kicker, Chariline does not look like the rest of her family. The rest of her family are Roman. They're, as she describes it, chalk white and blonde. Chariline's skin is the color of cinnamon with a touch of cream. And so in the kingdom of Cush, when she looks around, she can tell her mother might be Roman through and through, but her father is Cushite, or she definitely has Cushite blood. And so she always feels at home in Cush. Now, you asked me why I chose the kingdom of Cush. And okay, so first of all, the kingdom of Cush is located in the middle Nile. So when you go just south of Egypt, of ancient Egypt, so ancient Egypt was a neighbor to the kingdom of Cush. And I have been to Egypt. Yes, I have. I've visited Egypt a couple of times, and I've seen those pyramids that Mark Twain talked about. But I've never made it further south to between the fifth and sixth cataracts, where the city of Meroe was, which was the capital of Cush during this period. And I've never been there, but we still have over 200 surviving pyramids, believe it or not, from the kingdom of Cush. If you go there, you can visit them. Now, the Kushite pyramids are much smaller than the Egyptian ones. They are very delicate and tall and narrow, and then they have like a little chapel section to the entrance, attached to the entrance of the pyramid. So it's an incredible kingdom, lots of mystery. At one point, very, very rich and influential in that part of the world. Unfortunately, once it was destroyed in the 3rd and 4th centuries, we kind of lost all the information about this incredible kingdom. So I'm still waiting for someone, because no one has broken through the language of the Meroic language. So I'm still waiting for some really super smart person to take that on and translate those many Kushite sort of evidences that are left behind, that the documents, that we can read and see what it all was about. But I did my best to put together this kingdom in the book based on what we do have.
Right, but this now, Chariline's story was not the one you started out to write.
It was not, and thank you for passing that ball. Yes. So originally, when I wanted to write this book, in fact, I had spoken to my publishers, and we had agreed I was going to write a story about one of the daughters of Philip the Evangelist. And in fact, that was the book. The book's name was Philip's Daughter. And so I had done a lot of research. I'd come up with a storyline, more or less, about it. And then some of you will have read this. I've shared this online. What happened was a young lady wrote me an email, and I get fan letters. I'm one of those really fortunate writers who has a very beautiful connection with my readers. So my readers write me, and one of my fans wrote to say, you know, she loved the books, she'd read all of them, but she had a question for me. She said, I'm an African American, and are you ever going to write a story where the central heroine looks like me? Because I feel like it's important for me to read about characters who look like me. And honestly, that email is probably buried somewhere in my email, but I've never been able to find it. I don't know what her name is. It was a very short email, but it just changed everything for me because I couldn't get it out of my mind. And it kept popping up, and I kept feeling like I had a responsibility to her. And I felt like God was saying, just go with this. So at the end of the day, I sort of felt like, well, I really can't walk away from this. So I tore up my storyline and what I had. I kept some of the research because Chariline's friends are the daughters of Philip. Philip the evangelist is the one who baptized her. That's how she comes to faith. But they're really very side characters. Chariline, and that's how Chariline was born. Because I was trying to find a central character who would look like my reader, and where am I going to find her? And so I landed on the Kingdom of Cush. And don't read the author notes until you finish the book, because it just gives away too much. But once you finish reading the book, read the author's notes, and it will reveal a lot of questions you may have.
Right. And how is that different? I mean, you write, some of your books are you pluck a person from the Bible that maybe just has a few little verses attributed to them, or where they say something or something happens, and you take that person and you create a whole life and a whole story around that person. And sure enough, you know, that thing happens that happened in the Bible, but the rest of the book is all fictionalized of their life. But it's a real person. And sometimes the person is made up, that you've made them up. How is that different when you're writing a character like Chariline, who's one you're making up entirely? She doesn't appear in the Bible, but yet there are people around her who do. So how is that different when you're writing to write a fictional character rather than somebody straight from the Bible?
As a writer, because I'm writing about characters who are, if they are biblical characters, my readers and I were very interested in being very true to the essence of what's in the Bible. So I have to be very careful that I don't abuse any of the central things that we know about this person, while at the same time, it's very important to me that my readers have the experience that some of our best heroes and heroines of the faith are imperfect, that they have a backstory. And what their backstory shows is that in some way they have failed, or they have sinned, or they're struggling. They have the same struggles as we do. That they end up being the people they are, not because they're so perfect, but because they sort of cling to God. So I have to, on the one hand, when I'm writing about straightforward biblical characters, be very careful that I remain within the framework that the Bible sets forth. At the same time, the Bible doesn't tell us a lot about the backstories of these people. So I'm able to create some things that I probably will have to answer for once I enter heaven and meet people like Priscilla and Aquila. They're probably going to say, exactly why did you do that with our reputation? Anyway, I think the other aspect of it is when I write a completely fictional character, then of course I have more freedom. I can do whatever I want without feeling like I'm going to offend anybody. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, we have a special treat in store tonight for our audience, and I guess for you too, because you have not seen this yet. But we have a one-act drama that's going to be performed that will bring to life some of the events of Jewel of the Nile and the character of Chariline, thanks to our wonderful actress, Nyah Ajeya. And we are going to go away, and you can sit back and relax and let us take you on a voyage down the Nile in the 1st century, and you can have a taste of what this book has to offer.
I was close. How much longer can I avoid these sailors? It seems like they're always coming down here below deck to find a rope or extra rations. And if that's not bad enough, they parade around with their chests out, showing no regard for a stowaway's modesty. All right, now that's enough, Chariline. You have been through much worse than this and survived. You are very good at surviving. Yes, you are very good at that indeed. Just stay focused, think things through, and everything will be all right. Just keep thinking about the prize at the end of this journey. A father. My father. Is it really possible that we will be together someday? All this time, I thought you were dead and lost to me. So many years wondering what you were like. I had so many questions. How did you meet my mother? Did you love her very much? Why did you run away to marry without permission? But grandfather would not even allow me to say your name. Never mind, ask my questions. I wish things could have been different. What would it have been like to be a part of a family where I belonged, where I felt accepted, where the color of my skin would simply match my father's? All these years I've been raised by a family whose chalk white skin and pale hair have made me feel like an outsider. But if I had grown up with my father, an honored man from the kingdom of Cush, would he have looked at my skin and, unlike my grandfather, still called me beautiful? As a little girl, I dreamed of what it would be like to run and jump into the embrace of a father's loving arms. Here I am, Father! But will you even be happy to see me? If I can even find you, I hope so. For nearly a quarter of a century, I have been raised by people who viewed me as an obligation, or worse, a reminder of loss. Still, grandfather had no right to lie and tell me you were dead. Neither did Aunt Blandina. How could they betray me like that? Especially when they knew how much I longed to know about my parents. It's so dark down here. Blandina, you would approve of me being down here where the sun doesn't shine, wouldn't you? Chariline, hold your parasol high above your head so your skin doesn't roast in the sun. So it wouldn't turn any darker is what you really meant. I must stop daydreaming. Grandfather and his stone-cold heart are no longer my concern. Rationing food and avoiding discovery are. My fresh water will only last me a few more days. Then what? I must find a way to stay hidden until we are too far along on the voyage to turn back. Then I will figure out how to explain all of this to Theo. Theo! How will I ever explain this to you, my friend? I'm sorry, Captain. It's just that I couldn't go on this voyage on my own. So I slipped on board your ship like a common thief. No, I had to, you see. It's just that grandfather would never allow me to travel. Even if he did, I don't have any money. Even if I had money, a woman would never be permitted to travel on her own. So you see, I just had to stow away. No, I don't imagine you'll be happy to find me. You made it very clear that passengers would not be welcome on board your cargo ship. What will the crew think about having a woman on board? Somehow I will just have to make you understand. I couldn't sit and do nothing when I found out my father was alive. This ribbon is one of the few things I have left to remind me that I once had a mother who loves me. I'm so sorry that giving me life meant that you had to lose yours, Mother. I know Aunt Blandina loved you very much because she still hasn't forgiven me for taking you from her. She tried, I suppose, but we never became close. We just fell into this rhythm of mutual isolation. Truth be told, I'm so lonely right now. I even miss Aunt Blandina a little. At least she always kept me safe. Grandmother thinks we're a lot alike, Mother. I know she means that we share a love of architecture, but I like to think I have some of your rebellious spirit too. I mean, you ran away to find the man that you loved and marry him, and now I'm running away to find the father I never knew. I just hope that I'm better than you because you got caught. But why did I never know you, Father? If you have been alive all of these years, why did you never let me know of your existence? Were you sick and unable to get word to me? Were you afraid of grandfather? Did you not care? Didn't you know that I was miserable living with people who didn't love me? Or did you not even know I was born? I will find out. I will take heart. I am no longer an orphan. My father lives. It may be difficult, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to make it happen, but I will find him, and he will love me. God, you have made a way where there was none before. I trust that you will answer the questions of my soul. I trust. But will I be disappointed? Help me believe, God. Help me. Lead me the way to my future and lead me to my father.
Okay, we can't hear you, Lauren. Oh, I'm so sorry. You may have to go out and come in again. But while you do that, it looks like you can see me and you can hear me. And I've been reading all these comments about folks who love Nyah's performance. Nyah, you did a beautiful job if you can hear us. And you really brought Chariline alive for us. And in case you didn't read my comments, Lauren herself had written that sketch.
Can you
Hello,
hear me
welcome back.
now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I was clapping, so at least you could see that. Thank you, Nyah. That was just really wonderful. Is that the first time you've seen one of your characters come to life?
Actually, it's the second, and the last time
Okay.
was also one that you had written for the Ruth.
Well, yes, but they were
Launch.
real. I mean,
Oh,
Ruth
they
and
were real.
Naomi were real. This is somebody you created.
Oh, yes,
So,
that's true. Yes, yes, that in that case, yes, it's the first time.
great. That was fun. I'm really interested to hear some of, and we've had some questions coming through in the box about your research. I mean, obviously, there's a whole lot going on there in this story, and that's just one little scene. Tell me about how long does it take you to research, and how do you even research like what life on a cargo ship is like back in the first century on the Nile? Where do you even get that kind of information?
Well, I mean, I do everything I possibly can to connect with people who know this stuff. So I, for my ship travel, I connected with a gentleman who's written the map book. It's an award-winning book of maps for Moody. So I think it's the Moody Atlas book. And so he knows both his geography and the history of the biblical times. So I wrote him and I said, listen, this is my situation. How big is the ship and who would own it and how many owners and all of that. So he gave me so much help and actually corrected some of my misunderstandings as well, because you're talking about a period in history where a lot has changed. Sometimes when people just stick to looking online, they'll say, oh, in Rome, this was, for example, the harbor, but there were two harbors, and depending on what year you're writing, that will change completely. So I do things like that. I do a lot of, I own a lot of books. Like right now, you can probably see my pretty bookcase behind me, and that's just the one that I use for like Zoom and things. But my other bookcases, they have like triple rows of books stuck in there. But I'm always like, even right next to me right now, here's a book that I've been using for research. So books are an important part of reading and trying to enter into the world. So I get enough under my belt of this research, both in the Bible and sort of externally, to get familiar with the world of that I'm creating. So when I'm writing about that world, I myself feel like I'm entering it. I am walking in it. I'm smelling it. And every day as you write, there's still new things come up that you still have to research. But I've enough research under my belt to feel like I have a sense of the world.
But you did some extra research on this book, or for this book, on the maps that appear in the front of the book. And I was just amazed to hear that you not only had to write the story, but you had to develop your own maps. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so okay, so I don't know if you have access to the maps, if you read them as an ebook, but if you have the physical book, you will come across these two maps at the beginning. And because we were, with particularly the stowaway section of the story, they were traveling from Caesarea and they were traveling all the way to Rome. So they were making stops along the way. And my editors felt like, you really need some maps, Tessa. First, because nobody knows where Cush is. And second, because you have so much travel involved. So we looked, of course, at the back of the Bible, and we came up with one that was more or less appropriate, but it had so much going on in it. It had all this like arrows saying this is where Paul went, and that's where Silas went, and they felt that it was too confusing. And they said, so Tessa, you're the writer, so actually by my contract, I am responsible for procuring maps. And they said, could you just create a couple of really simple maps? And I said, create them? And they said, yeah. So, of course, whenever I receive an impossible task, I run to my hubby and I say, hubby, create a map. So bless him. He did. He figured out. And we don't have either map or art creating program. So what we had was pretty clunky, but we managed to do it. It took us a long time to create these, but if you look at them, I'm very proud of this. I feel like
That's quite something.
Yeah, it's really. And here's the Delta in Egypt, and it takes you to Meroe. So yeah, so that's the map story.
I mean, that would be like someone telling me if I wrote the play, a play, I'd have to also write the music. I mean, it would not happen. So I think you're pretty talented to be able to do that. What about her being an architect? That's very intriguing to me. How many women architects were there really back then?
I don't know. I don't know that there were any women architects, to be frank. We had, again, this started with my husband, who's an engineer. And at work, they had this presentation by an architect who kind of talked about Vitruvius, who's the most famous Roman architect about, 30 years before this. So he came home all excited and he said, look, I've got all these notes from Vitruvius. And I said, isn't that fantastic? So he ordered Vitruvius's original, well, not the original book, but the original translation of Vitruvius's 10 books on architecture for me. And he said, well, how about your next character wants to be an architect? And so we looked it up and we realized just how involved that was. And that's how Vitruvius's granddaughter was born. We made her up completely. But we just wanted to talk about the fact that there were women, there have always been women along the way that kind of are iconoclasts. They had to work so hard, but they broke the mold and were able to accomplish things that were impossible. I mean, think of Lydia, who was a seller of purple in a world of men. So kind of we wanted to show, often women sort of say, hey, it's still hard to be in a world of men. I think we have so much success today, but sometimes we still have some struggles. And I want my readers to know you can overcome. It doesn't matter what stands in your way. You can overcome.
That's great. That's great. I'm also interested to know, because she mentions Theo in that drama, and he is a sort of a main character in this book, but his story started 2 books ago, and he appeared briefly in the book before this one. And some of the characters from the last book also appear in this book in a more minor capacity. Did you start out thinking that you were going to tell Theo's story in the course of several books or over more than one book, or did it just happen that way?
It really only happened that way. I would say it's one of the gifts that God gave me, because Theo was born, the whole concept of Theo was born because I was reading about the world and so a few facts about babies. And so that's how Theo's character was born. He was supposed to be a very side character, but he just grew and grew in that first novel, which was Thief of Corinth. I just want to let you know, if you haven't read any of my books, this is a standalone. But what I'm reading from some of the reviews, most of them are saying you can totally read this standalone. It's still great. But if you read the first book, it gives you a bigger depth. And so you can make your decision whether you want to start with that or this one. But what was interesting is that Theo just kind of grew in that first novel. And I really did not even know the ending. I didn't know his exact background and how it was going to end up being. And what it turned out to be was a surprise to me. It sort of came to me what we were going to write maybe 3/4 into the book was when I realized what was going to happen. And then at that point, I knew that I couldn't leave Theo like that. The only decision was Theo going to end up having his like all of that resolved, not all of it, but most of it resolved as a side character, or was he going to be a main character? And I will tell you that Theo has become one of the most favorite characters that I've ever written, especially maybe even my favorite male character. He's pretty awesome for me.
Well, and this book, for me, I felt like you really go deep in this one in terms of what the characters are going through and what they're dealing with. There's a lot of, personal feelings about themselves and trying to come to terms with that. Forgiving other people, wanting other people to forgive them. It's very complex. It's not just a simple storyline and someone has an epiphany and it's all solved or something. They all have these things, and it really comes down to, when we were talking about this earlier, the theme of scars, and that we all carry scars. Some of them are outward, people can see them right away, and some of them are internal. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, was that your intention to go deep on that theme, or did that just kind of happen while you were writing too?
That kind of happened. I think for me, the kinds of books that I love to write about they're sort of like onions. They're just all these layers that come apart. Some of those layers are external. And so they're layers, external layers in terms of plot in this book that you may guess right away. I've had this is the book that's been the most disparate in terms of reader response, in terms of the plot line. Some readers are like, wow, I never figured out these threads until toward the end. And some people said, oh yeah, I figured it out right toward the beginning. But, for me, the plot is never the driving force. I wrote it in such a way that if you do figure it out, and I kind of had in mind that most people might figure it out. So I'm really pleased that not everybody does. Actually, a lot of people seem not to. That even though you know what's going on with Chariline, the whole fun is these layers, the onion layers within the characters. So not just the external layers of plot, but the internal layers. At one point, Theo says to Chariline, and Theo is kind of a self-protective person. He doesn't reveal a lot about himself, but he says at one point, how Jesus says, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. And he says, and he reminds her of that. And he says, there was a time in my own life where I came to the end of the age of my life. I came to the end of the age of dreams. I came to the end of the age of belonging. I came to the end of the age of hope. It was just an end for me. And I really needed to know the always of God in that situation. I needed to know in this end, God was present with me. And he talks about some of the scars. And Theo is the person in this narrative who has figured out that he has scars. He's figured out that those scars lie to him, and they tell him things about himself and about God that are not true. And he's overcome a lot of that, but he still knows that there are some things that still have power, that those scars still have power. And I think the fascination of scars for me is that I myself have physical scars. Like when I was little, I walked through a pane of glass, so my face has scars. And as soon as I walk through the door, you're gonna see my scar. I mean, they've faded because since childhood, but they're there. As soon as you get close to me, you'll be like, hey, what happened? But the rest of us may not, some of us may walk through the door and everybody will look at us, at our body, at our face, and go, hey, you're scarred. I can see that things aren't perfect with you. But most of us carry our scars internally. And it's a question of, do we know where we are? Do we know the always of God in those places of ending, in those lies that the scars tell us, where we feel like our dreams are at an end, or where we feel like the way we look at ourselves in a mirror is really twisted? And can we allow the always of God, the always of God's love, or the always of God's mercy, or the always of just God's closeness that gives us the strength to go on for one more hour? So this book is really about the always of God, helping us understand our scars, helping us cope with them, deal with them, and find healing through them.
That's great. Well, we want to have an opportunity to take some of the questions that have been put into our Ask a Question box. And some of them we've answered just because we've done such an excellent job of interviewing and answering questions that some of them already, I think, are answered. But there are a few, so I want to touch on those. And briefly, a couple of people have asked about, what are your next books? Do you have another fiction book in the works coming out, and also nonfiction Bible study? What are you working on?
So right now, I'm working on a book that's based on the Old Testament. So I'm returning to the Old Testament. And okay, let's leave it at that. So that's my next story. And then are we talking about a Bible study? We are talking very far down the line about writing another Bible study, yes. Okay.
Well, I think that's the answer we want to hear, is that there's more coming in both categories. One question we have is, your books are, all loved and touch people in many different ways. And which one or ones of your books would you like to see made into a movie?
Oh gosh, how about all of them? Not that I'm greedy or anything. No, I think some of the folks here may not know this, but a couple of years ago, I think it was actually just about 3 years, coming up on 3 years, an honest to goodness producer called me and said, okay, I've been reading your books and I'm interested in acquiring the rights to a few of them. I want to write about I want to create a few movies about strong women, and our company doesn't just share the movies here in the US, it's sort of like all over the world. And so it was really exciting. They weren't an out and out Christian, and they were very open about that. And they said, listen, all of those faith-based parts, we're going to pull that out. So it won't be faith-based. We sort of felt like, well, let's look into it a little bit, only because we felt like historical books almost never get turned into movies unless like you have sold 1 million copies or something of a particular story that's really popular, because they're so expensive to produce. But so we thought, the main threads, even if you take out all that really specifically Christian verses out of it, the main threads of these books have some they have some weight to them, they have some bearing to them, and maybe it's okay. But at the end of the day, when we kind of went back and forth, it didn't work out for us. But what it did work out for us was for us to start praying about this. It just sort of, we got bit with the bug of that possibility, of that hope. And so every once in a while and we would love your prayers as well, we still pray that the right person will come in and the right person would invite us to maybe create one of the books, any of the books. I'd be happy with any of the books.
That's great. Well, we want to bring Jennifer back because I know that you and she have a bunch of wonderful prizes and giveaways for audience members here, randomly given. So we're going to bring her back for that. There she is.
Hi.
We can hear you.
Yay! Oh my goodness. I have been enjoying this so much. I don't want it to end. So let's do it again soon. But yes, we have the giveaway, and we have. So Tessa, when we were making arrangements for this evening, you said that you wanted to give some gifts to some audience members. And you worked with Ilana Stolman in our museum store to choose some items. And as it turns out, I learned the other day that every one of your novels has bees in it in some way or another, right? And as it happens, we have a bee theme at the Mark Twain House Museum. Our most recently restored space, the Mahogany Guest Suite, has beautiful wall coverings that are designed by Candace Wheeler, who was a member of Associated Artists. And they too have a bee theme. And so Ilana had some merch created reflecting the bees. And I have chosen, I'll show you what they are. We have 2 of these beautiful, beautiful scarves, which I've kept in their plastic. So I hope you can see them well enough. Can you see?
Yeah, they're silk scarves, I think.
Silk scarves, yes, and they're gorgeous. I give them often as gifts myself, so you can see the beautiful bees on those. So we have 2 of those that Tessa is giving away, and then this very cool. I wish I were winning this. This little flip notepad. So it comes with a little pen, and it flips open, and it too has that honeybee motif. So I randomly, well, not randomly, I did a system where I went through at a certain moment in the program when there were 100 people, and I picked the 20th person on the list, the 40th, and the 60th person on the list. So I hope that's random enough for everybody. So I think the first 2 people will get the scarves, and the 3rd person will get the book. Would you like me to announce who gets the winners?
Please.
Yes.
Nancy Lafferty. Tessa would like to give you a scarf, a beautiful silk scarf.
That's so awesome.
Do you know Nancy Lafferty?
I do. I do. Wow. It's wonderful.
Oh, yes. Good. Emily T. also is receiving from Tessa a beautiful scarf. And,
okay, and can I just insert here before you announce the other person? If you are here, you need to give us your address, and I don't know how they can give that. I'm sure you'll let them know.
I was going to arrange that in the chat once we
fantastic.
spoke. So thank you for bringing that up, Tessa. Yes, that's very important.
Because if they're no longer here, that'll be a little difficult.
It will be. Well, Emily T is saying thanks.
Here. Yeah.
So So I'll announce the winner of the beautiful little flip notepad, and then I will go about making sure. And you two are going to speak for another moment or so before we get off, and that'll give you a chance to double check that everybody is still here in the audience.
And I think I can figure out where Nancy is if she's had to step away, so we can figure that out too.
Oh, okay, very good. So Nancy's good, and Emily T is here. And how about Linny Godfrey?
Yay!
Oh, you guys know everybody. So various options for these. If somebody has purchased a book, I think we might be able to send your gift out to you with your book. If we have your address, I mean, we will obviously if we have the book. And anyway, we'll arrange all of that. But Tessa, that was very generous and very sweet and very fun. And
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say also thank you for all the fun notes. I've been reading the notes along the chat notes, and it's been really wonderful just to see your responses. And I agree, because along the way, every once in a while, someone just pops up again and says, Nyah was amazing. Nyah really was wonderful. And that sketch was so powerful. I am always amazed by how those of you, Lauren, who write these know exactly how it will come to life, because it's so flat on the written page, and then this actor comes and they start speaking the words, and all of a sudden you're mesmerized just how it comes alive.
Can we bring Nyah back up for a second just to...
I think we can, if she's willing to come back up. Let me find her. Nyah, we're looking for you. And just in response, Tessa, to what you were saying, remember that this is being recorded, and you can come back and read the chat later. You can read every word if you missed anything.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and if you want to invite your friends to come back and have a look, they can come back. Nyah, you were fantastic.
There she is. I felt like she should be the one to say how she brought that to life, because she's the one who did it.
Hi. Yeah, honestly, I've never done a monologue for like that long. Usually monologues of acting are just a minute or so. So it was, I think Lauren's writing helped a lot in me just bringing it along, because it really was just telling the story of what brought Chariline to the point that she was at. And just, it was written so well descripted that it was really easy for me to get into the emotion of the character and understand that she's really dealing with all of these different ideas and moments and things that are going through her mind while she's on this ship. And so it was just really fun. It was just a character that was really fun to bring to life. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Glad that was your experience. We had a lot of rehearsals, it seemed like, to try to make it through all of those thoughts, so that we because you were coming at it blind. I mean, I had read the book, so I knew who she was and where she was coming from, and you just had these few pages to work with. So I was really amazed that you were able to bring her to life so effectively.
And I think I'm speaking for everybody in the audience, Nyah, and saying it was powerful and mesmerizing, and it went by so quickly. So I don't know. We'd like to see more of your work. So maybe you can get in the chat and let us know where else we might find you.
Of course. Sure.
Well, thank you.
That was
again.
Wonderful.
I mean, I'm just
you,
thrilled to be with the Mark
course.
Twain House anytime, and thank you, Jacques at Buzz Engine, for thinking of it, and it's always a pleasure.
Well,
Absolutely. And again, I wanted to let everyone know, if you want to invite your friends to come back, this will be up for a while. And I think for the next couple of days, you can still order books, right, from Mark Twain House.
that's correct. Yep, and we'll make sure that link is very visible in the chat, so people can find it easily. Somebody asked if I would post the names of the winners in the chat. I will do that as well. I'll just say again, Nancy Lafferty, Emily T, and Linny Godfrey were the winners of Tessa's gifts tonight. So if you can stick around, I will gather I'll find a way to get your gifts to you. What a lovely evening. Thank you both, Lauren and Tessa. And you could tell that you're friends. The magic and rapport between the two of you is just a wonderful thing to take part in. And I couldn't stop smiling. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And
Very
we
good to
couldn't
hear.
stop smiling either. And again, thank you everybody for sharing the joy, and for Mark Twain House and Museum for allowing us to bring this book on through you. Yeah, it's just memorable. We'll always remember this.
Definitely.
I know I will. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to close the program, and then I'm going to hop back in the chat to do that housekeeping with the gifts. So let's give a big virtual round of applause to Tessa and Lauren and to Nyah. And we can't wait to see you all again.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.